I'm 20 years old, standing in the back of a pickup truck in the garbage dump in the Dominican Republic. I'm on a spring break mission trip, and we have made hundreds of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to give away to the Haitian refugees who actually live a better life scavenging for food in a garbage dump in the Dominican Republic than they do on the other side of this island in Haiti. The dump is the size of like 20 Shotwell stadiums laid next to each other in a grid. And because there are no laws or restrictions on what you can throw away in the Dominican Republic, it smells like each one of these stadiums has been filled with food and dead animals, medical waste, yard waste, whatever else you wouldn't want outside your house. And all of that material is here in the hot tropical sun, and it's rotting. The flies are enormous and they're everywhere. And I'm standing in the back of this pickup, and we have communicated through a combination of Haitian French Creole and really bad Spanish that we have food for them and that they should form a line. They make an initial attempt at doing so behind the pickup truck, and when they do this, they drop the t-shirts that they have wrapped around their faces to hold off the smell. And I see their faces up close for the first time. I notice the mothers. Their bodies are young, and the babies that they are holding suggest that they're all at least under 30, but hunger has caused early lines to form on their gaunt faces. There's a distance in their eyes I have never seen before. And it strikes me as odd that when they look at me, they're not really looking at me. We lower the gate to the pickup, and at first we were just handing out sandwiches, and people are leaving, and it's going well. But before we've handed out 20 sandwiches, someone cuts, and the reaction is immediate and frenetic. And it's not what I would have suspected. It's scary, but then in the very next second, someone accuses someone else of coming back in line twice, and instead of waiting, and then in a matter of 3 seconds, before we've handed out 25 sandwiches, the line is gone, arms are rising out of a pack of people, and they're pulling back shoulders of the people in front of them, and these mothers are pushing children too old to be held out of the way so that they can get their food, and I become very scared and very judgmental. How could a mother push a child even if the child wasn't theirs? What would make someone act like that? What was that distant look in their eyes? The answer to all of those questions is hunger. I realize my questions all start from the same place. While I have felt unfull, I have never become hungry. That day on the back of the pickup truck, everything turned out okay, but once we ran out of sandwiches, they all just left. But I looked and I learned at what happens and what it looks like when someone is hungry. True hunger robs you of your ability to be thoughtful or kind or a compassionate person, because true hunger is so demeaning and brings you so close to death that you are only capable of thinking of survival. So when Jesus says that hungry people are blessed, I think about Haitian mothers and I kind of wince. You'll find some people who will tell you that Jesus isn't talking about poor people here, but people who hunger and thirst for righteousness. They really, really want righteousness, but I don't really buy that. Jesus was many things, and being perceptive of his audience is probably at the top of that list. Jesus doesn't casually or incidentally use the word hungry when he's talking to poor people. Jesus is speaking to people who feel hunger like the Haitians in the dump that day. He's speaking to people, some of whom may have had that distant look in their eye, who experience true hunger. And I have to believe he is choosing his words wisely when he says, "Those of you here today who are hungry and thirsty are blessed." I think people like me who have never been desperately hungry may have a tendency to read this beatitude and think, oh, this is about being a good person, like really being hungry and thirsty to be righteous. After all, righteousness is its own reward. And while I do think righteousness is its own reward, and doing everything I can to live like Jesus will fill me in ways nothing else can, I think Jesus is saying more still. I think Jesus is telling people like you and me who have never been hungry, have something to learn from hungry people. Hungry people don't have control over their hunger. If they could get more food, they would. So when Jesus looks at people who can't afford to feed themselves and says, "You're blessed," I think what he's saying is, the one thing you can't afford to do is to follow God's righteousness, to seek after God's kingdom at all cost. After all, righteousness is just living as though God is already in charge of this world. But here's the amazing promise. We assume that Jesus says, when you hunger after righteousness, you'll get righteousness, but that's not what Jesus says. He says, you who are hungry are blessed when you hunger and thirst for righteousness because you will be filled. It's unclear exactly what he means. Filled with what? What if Jesus meant hungry people will be filled with food? Hungry people will be filled with spirit. Hungry people will be blessed, filled with so much. And when I hear Jesus saying hungry people are blessed, I still think of Haitian mothers and I still kind of wince, but I don't ask, how could Jesus be so insensitive anymore? I don't think Jesus was being insensitive. I think he was looking into the eyes and promising more than a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Jesus was promising them a different, new world. I think he was saying, because of me, one day the righteous poor will be full of food, but also so much more. The righteous poor will one day have everything, because if you can be a person who lives for the kingdom even when you're hungry, well, there's nothing that will stop you from living for the kingdom. The hungry have something to teach us. This week, instead of thinking of ways you can help poor people, what is a way your huddle can experiment with learning from people who have less than you? What can they teach you about righteousness?